So what else do you do?
Give me 1 second. We're just about to start.
Okay.
Ready? Oh, so we're going. All right. Good morning, everybody. Nikki Burnett here, Taste Life Nutrition Radio, streaming live on KUHSdenver.com, where Henry is the amazing techie who's laughing at me right now because I'm always screwing things up, but that's the way it goes, I suppose. Anyway, one of my favorite things about this show, which I say pretty much on a regular basis, but today is especially true, is we bring on really some of the most amazing people who have so much to give, and you know, through their lives and through their stories, they are now here to serve and to help us to live bigger, better lives and to be of service. And that's what I love about everybody we bring on. I think to date, everybody we've brought on is an entrepreneur doing really freaking cool things. And so today we have Justin Franson, who just has the biggest brain. It's so much fun to be surrounded by a big brain. So Justin, thanks for being here. So I've seen Justin speak a couple of times, and so if you are watching, when you're finished with this, take it, share it. This is something that everybody needs to know about, and it's just freaking cool. Well, cool and scary. But before we get started, as always, Justin, we start the show with gratitude. So we want, I believe gratitude can change the world. What are you grateful for?
My family.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, family's good. Family is grounding, which we'll talk a lot about. Family is grounding. I'm super, so same, grateful for my family, but this is a long weekend. Our long weekends like this, we always go to the mountains where we are away from the craziness of the city. So I'm stoked about that. Glad to get away. We've been rushing around all morning, packing our gear, getting stuff going, getting the dogs ready, and we're going to be heading out and heading to the mountains. So that's what I love to do. All right, so Justin is the founder of, yes, as well as EMFrocks.com. The things that are most interesting and scary at the same time to me is the EMFs, which are the electromagnetic frequencies. And I'm seeing this, as I'm paying attention, so much more in my practice, which is just craziness. So, sorry, let's start with your story. Instead of getting into that, I kind of just went off because it's on the top of my brain and I can't wait to talk about it. But I want to understand, and I like everybody else to understand because I think it's relatable, how you got to this place, what you do, what your story is, and how you got here.
Oh, thanks, Nikki. Well, I'm a practitioner like yourself, where I started athleticism working with amateur and professional athletes, and about over a dozen years ago, I saw them breaking down from this wearable technology. And so I was doing nerve work and fascia and whole body, whole brain stuff, like really out of the box coordination stuff. And when I see an athlete getting disconnected from the wearable technology, that really brought me to dive into it. And one of them in particular had a smartwatch on his wrist. And he said, "Justin, I have pain in my wrist." And I said, "Well, which wrist?" He said, he pointed right to where the watch was. And I said, "Take the radiation off your wrist." Yeah. And his pain went away. And so that was literally it. I just said, we got to dive into this topic and understand how we are electric beings, how we're one with nature, and how these non-native waveforms are different.
Yeah. So this is super interesting because everybody's wearing one of these watches. It's their phone, it checks their health and their heart rate, it checks their sleep, right? Everybody's wearing one of these watches. And
yeah, it's crazy. I mean, they're literally self-inducing radiation we're seeing for I don't know what it is for.
Ever?
For someone, yeah, no,
right?
well, for someone to tell them how they feel, how they slept, how many steps they took, when it's time to eat. I mean, we got to get out of this meta universe and get into connecting with nature, like you're going to do this weekend. Get connected to God, get grounded by nature, and know how you feel. We don't want a device to tell us how we feel.
That's so true. I love that. So let's back up a little bit, because I was introduced to what you do right about a year ago. So it was, if anybody watches the show, you know how much I love Cellcore. And so Justin was at the Cellcore conference, where we learned really cool, outside of the box, amazing, mind-blowing things. And this was one of them. Of course, I knew of electromagnetic frequencies, and how damaging they are. But it also, some of it is like, is it real? Is it conspiracy? We're now at 5G. What does this mean for us? And so this year at the conference, I ran into Justin and had already had you scheduled for the show. But what you told me was read The Invisible Rainbow to give a background. And so it was read the first 100 pages, because what's a 400 or 500 page book, right? I mean, it's
huge.
It's a big one, but I'm excited to get through the rest of it. So I've gotten through 90 pages, so I'm almost there. But I can't wait to read the rest. I never thought that I would want to read about electricity. It's like so not me. But this is like bioelectricity. So, kind of anytime there's the word bio, I'm like, okay, I want more. So I want to kind of, can you give a little bit of a background on your research, which includes the invisible rainbow, but your research as to what it was prior to electricity, like prior to the discovery, right, of electricity, 1800s?
1889 was the first year we rolled out electricity into our homes.
Okay, yeah. Oh, some of the pictures that they show, I mean, we think we have a lot of wires now. The wires at one time that like shaded the cities because there were so many wires. This is amazing. Anyway, give you a little bit of your understanding of the history of electricity and what has transpired.
Definitely, Nikki. The book is awesome, The Invisible Rainbow by Arthur Furstenberg, because it categorizes the history of electricity and life. And it directly correlates every shift in our electromagnetic blanket of an atmosphere to us adapting to it. And before that 1889, when electricity was brought into our lives in a close proximity, when people got sick, they correlated it with solar flares, atmospheric pressure shifts, cosmic shifts in our atmosphere. And then once we put electricity in the homes, they called the flu before that, because it would fly in and fly out with those solar flares. And then once electricity hit our homes, it became seasonal. It was here to stay. And then from then on, every major man-made rollout of radio waves was correlated with disease. So 1918, the Spanish flu, we broadcasted radio waves for the first time ever in a large scale. Then World War II, radar, satellites in the Van Allen belt for the Hong Kong flu, and then everyone knows the last several years was the rollout of 5G.
It's fascinating. And so one of the things that really helped to bring it home for me in the book was thinking about how it is that, specifically the flu, right? But how it is that it comes and goes seasonally, right? All at the same time, all at the same place. And one of the things that so it comes and then it's gone, including on ships, like our military ships or whatever. So you've got these people who have been away from land for months. What happens? They also get the flu. So it just made me really sit and think of, there's so many questions I wish I had them and I need to write them down, but this whole list of questions about, when one of the researchers was like, how come we can't answer this list of 10 or 15 questions about the flu, the most researched condition or virus, if that's what you want to call it? That's what they tend to call it. We can go in a whole other tangent with that one. But so how is it that we have no idea about this? And I just find it so amazing. Yes?
Oh, for sure. And this goes back to Louis Pasteur versus Béchamp. And Pasteur, we got pasteurized milk from him, but before he died, he recanted all of his science. And he said, look, I was just getting paid to sell this and this fear as information. He's like, Béchamp is the real scientist. Follow him, because he was studying twins. And so he was looking at bioterrain and saying, hey, if one twin wasn't well, that was because of his bioterrain. There wasn't a germ that was causing him to be that. Mm-hmm. And if he wasn't well, there was an environmental factor in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. So it's that germ theory, versus terrain theory, right? So
exactly.
much of this is we're blaming outside factors when, yes, there are always going to be outside factors. And I think that's a big part of this conversation, because magnetic frequencies aren't going to go away. So how do we support ourselves, our bodies, our internal environment to learn, help our bodies to deal? Yeah, I mean, yeah. But it's so new, and it's the people like you who are sort of helping us try to understand. But the things that we're seeing, and so help me with this for today. At least two things: our homes, our environment. What are we seeing that is impacting us? And then what are you seeing as far as in clinic, how people are being impacted by EMFs?
Yeah, definitely. So Nikki, let me just ask a question back to your audience and say, what is your environment? And the answer is, it's literally everything around you. And it can actually kill you instantly, or you can thrive in it. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to lean in on this air. Let's talk about the air. And we don't think of the air as much as our environment, unless it's a pollutant where you could see it or smell it. Like you're in LA, it's polluted, you can smell it, industrial stuff, you can see the smog. That's the only time we equate our air as being a pollution. Mm-hmm. So that's a really challenging thing, because when we're dealing with these electromagnetic fields and frequencies, they're invisible waveforms, and they're literally one-directional waveforms. So they're a different design of a waveform than we are designed to be.
So it's not natural, correct?
It's not natural.
Yeah.
It's not natural. It's polarizing. Mm-hmm. We're designed off of unpolarized scalar waves. That's the name of the wave that it makes us one with the universe. Every living organism has a resonance. That resonance is unpolarized. Nikki, they didn't say stand 6 to 8 feet away from Justin's right ear in a straight line. That's just not how it works. Our biofield goes out equally in every direction. I'm not getting grounded by an earthing from the earth in one spot, and then a foot over I'm out of that resonance. It's an entire resonance. The sun, it's not a laser dot, a one-directional wave. It refracts, of course, but it distributes equally in every direction. And then my favorite example is, if you were to stand above a little water and drop a pebble directly and perpendicularly into a pond, does the splash of that pond go in a straight line to the right?
Nope.
Or to the left?
Nope.
No, mm-hmm. It doesn't. It distributes equally mm-hmm. in every direction. Yeah. That is because the framework of our entire universe is an unpolarized wave form that we are one with. So when you introduce these non-native one directional waveforms. They're polarizing. They chip away at our life force in an array of different ways. So I could dive into that. I mean, that's the number of ways it affects us is just a long answer in itself.
Well, I think that it's important to understand that so people can start to think about it. Well, you know, what's going on? We have so much chronic disease, right? So I say disease, dis-ease. You know, dis-ease can be a whole host of things. And so I'll say my current story is I'm working with a client we're both struggling, right? I'm like, holy smokes, you know, she's got all kinds of stuff going on. We know there's mold, we know there's, you know, parasitic infection, and we're trying to work on these, but she's like, I'm still struggling. So 2 weeks ago, she came to me and, you know, we're just sort of chitty-chatting, and she says, yeah, you know, just came back, went camping, it was so great, had so much fun, and then we moved on. 10 minutes later, I see your face. And I was like, okay, you were camping. Where were you? She's like, we were out in Moab. So no cell phone, no nothing. She's like, absolutely nothing. He said, how do you feel? That's why her answer was, that's why I go camping, because I feel 800 times better. And I went,
wow.
Oh, crap, okay. So so I started, you know, talking to her about all of this, and I told her that we're going to have the show today, so I can send her the show today. Have another client who's super, super struggling, and she's going camping this weekend. She's like, I'm not looking forward to it. I said, what I need for you to do is take it as this is a time for you to pay attention to your body. How do you feel? You know, love on it, you know, love on your body, but you journal. Are you noticing changes in your GI, in your headaches, in, you know, the ringing in your ears, right? She has these horrible ulcers, constant ulcers in her mouth for years and years and years. She can't eat. I mean, it's awful. So anyway, those are just my two that come to me that have been just in the last couple of weeks that we've been talking about, you know, and is this playing a really big role in that? And so I think people need to understand, what do we look for? If we're not getting better and we're doing all of these things and we're told that we're crazy and we're told we need antidepressants and, you know, on and on and on and on, what if it's your house and your environment, or it's your house that's making you sick, but you're unable to deal with it, right? So it still goes back to our body. We need to be able to teach our body how to deal with it, and bring the things in to help deal with it. Am I making sense? And you know what? I know you know what I mean.
Of course. I want to get back to this, but I want to say this first is the most incredible way we can heal is to get out into nature, and it's free.
Yep. Right.
And I'll just say it now. There's 5 at least different ways that it helps us. Number 1, we get the Earth's resonance. We get a negative ionic charge. We pull those electrons from the Earth's resonance. They call it the Schumann resonance. It supports our electron transport chain that gives us energy. So right out of the gates, that's one of the first mechanisms where we derive energy. We get number 2 from the light of the sun. We are basically a holograph of light. Our bodies are. We do really well with light and or sound, and because of those frequencies, we fuel our body as well, as Dr. Zach Bush would say, from the air. So when you're breathing in those microbiomes, that's real stuff. We're getting minerals because there's waves and particles. There's particles in the air that are feeding us. And then hopefully we get minerals and more nutrients from our food, and as well as water. And then with the water, we get the conductivity of it all. If we're missing any one of those 5 elements, Nikki, we become a gateway for dis-ease. Just as similar as, I'll use the analogy of a car battery. If it runs out of water, the car battery dies. We have a few more mechanisms where we don't die right away, but it's a really, really great concept to grasp.
Yeah, so I tell people this a lot. At minimum, I mean, yes, all of those things, but I just go outside and walk in the grass. And people are like, why? You know, and it's all of these free things. It's, you know, breathing properly also, you know, I mean, you were talking about breathing, but breathing properly so you're not sitting in this constant fight or flight, right? I mean, all of these things that are free and simple that I don't always do either. This is all a practice, but having the information, having the knowledge, knowing that you can do it is the first step to going and doing it. So,
definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, did you all hear what Nikki just said? It's free. Go outside, touch a tree, get grounded. It's free. Get grounded by nature. That's our nature.
Yeah.
And the reason why you do it is because of all these signs and symptoms of disease. So let me dive into that a little bit.
Yeah.
So it all starts with mitochondria dysfunction. That's why Nikki and I speak the same language, and that's what CellCore was all about. Dr. Martin Paul out of Washington State University discovered that the gateway for our cells to derive energy is disrupted instantly with low-level EMF, even milligauss levels of electricity, 50 to 60 waves per second, a really low-level bandwidth. It still messes with our mitochondria. The more technical name is that's the voltage-gated calcium channels that are disrupted. It lets positive calcium into a negative cell, and in turn causes tremendous cell and DNA damage, single and double strand breaks. It destructures water, dehydrates you, it disrupts your endocrine system, so you don't get these deep sleeps, and you're not connecting to God. It calcifies your pineal gland. So you're seeing all those right out of the gate just because your mitochondria, that powerhouse of your cell, is not allowed to derive energy. That's why people break down, and it's a slow cook process. Now, from there, I see level 1, 2, and 3, Nikki. Level 1 is all cognitive. Lack of focus, memory, anxiety, fatigue, stress, headaches, ringing in the ears, that the behavioral challenges that you will see in a workplace per se, or in relationships, what have you. It's all from non-native waveform.
In schools?
In schools. Oh, yeah, in schools, big time.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a huge button too. We've spent all this money hardwiring these schools and our homes, and now we're going away from it. Now companies are starting to roll back out, thank goodness, fiber optic, because it's faster, it's safer, it's more reliable, and there's minimal health challenges. So we got to get back to where we were with that. Now, level 2, Nikki, is more your non-trauma concussion symptoms of nausea, vomiting, muscle twitches to seizures, rashes on the skin, bloody noses, ringing in the ears. I mean, these are what we saw in the Havana cohort, which was the first attack of U.S. embassy workers on foreign soil in Havana, Cuba, and China with microwave targeted radiation at them. And they did multiple segments on 60 Minutes with it. And then you go into the bigs: cancer, suicide, diabetes, Alzheimer's disease, cardiovascular disease, and the big one that we're seeing now, kind of we talked to before we got on air, is infertility.
Yeah.
All of those are what we're seeing at record levels, and every one of those on the bar graph has gone up exponentially. And yeah, fake food came in for diabetes, but the other thing is every single one of these, Nikki, I've seen clinically, personally, in the last over a dozen years in this space with my clients.
It's crazy because we all know, I mean, there are lots of factors, but I think it kind of goes back to, so a couple of things. You know, we have, you know, the easiest way, what we hear a lot is we've got our bucket, right? And so if you've got your bucket, and once it starts to overflow, we start to get really serious symptoms. But we're struggling even before that. One of the things that I find super interesting is that I know, because I love genetics and looking at the genetics and the various SNPs and that kind of thing, and SNPs being variants, sort of genetic epigenetic variants, but that we have some people have various genetic variants that make them more predisposed to being sensitive to electricity. In the book, which I found so fascinating, because this was prior to that, to understanding that we have this potential genetic makeup, some of us do. I don't remember what the stat was, but it was 20 or 30% of the population was sensitive to electricity, that they sort of assumed back then. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we've had these SNPs, but now we have the electricity, and they're starting to express, and so it expresses dis-ease. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, think of what we talked about off air as well. Is think about if all those signs of disease have increased at record levels over the last 140 years, what is the next 140 years going to look like? Because we're holding, radiation in our hands with these cell phones, and then we put laptops over our laps, and a lot of people are driving electric cars, which we'll get into that topic.
Yes. Yeah.
And then we have smart meters on our homes, which are basically a two-way router. It's like a cell tower on your home. And this Internet of Things. And then just absolutely insane, fraudulent, if you will, rollout of satellites as a solar system in our atmosphere. Like, we're already connected. The craziest thing that I can say is, if there's approximately 8 billion people on the planet, and already over 5 billion of them have smartphones and are on social media, why in the world do we even think we need to roll out another 100,000 satellites to radiate the crap out of the world? It is absolutely insane.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
We're already connected. We're already there. So when is enough enough?
Yeah, it's true. And I wanted to comment too, I'm going to jump back just a second, on the infertility rates, where what I find so fascinating and horrifying, is that I think it's been in the last 40 years, male fertility rates have dropped 50%. I think that's right. But it's huge. It's huge. We're seeing people who are constantly struggling, who are should be otherwise healthy people, who are struggling to get pregnant. And two, I think that we don't think as much about the men as we do the women. It's just sort of a societal thing, but we've got to start, because it's affecting women, it's affecting men, and we're seeing it. I mean, it's all in the data. And it's just, I was going to go off on a whole other tangent that I probably shouldn't, but
well, Nikki, let me